Barstow Junior staff. I just wanted to make a couple tips and tricks for Google Drive now that we're almost done with week 1. I'm sure our Google Drives are starting to look a little bit wild, so I wanted to show you a couple of things that you can do in Google Drive to make it so it's not so overwhelming. Firstly, as you can see, I'm clearly a fan of folders, and I'm clearly a fan of color-coded folders. If you want to know how to do that, give it a right click. You can rename them to anything you need them to be, and you can change the color. So there's that. That's just for me so that they look pretty. Okay, actual stuff that helps. So we actually, as BUSD, have this nice spot that says priority, and that's a really cool feature. And it lets us create these workspaces. So I'm doing this for a week at a time. I'm setting up what I need in my workspace. For example, for next week, I started my materials list. That way I have these Google Docs that I know I want to push out to students or forms or anything like that. So for example, this setup in 2020, this was almost what my first week of school resources were, right? The responses to them asking me a question so I could find it. This was our Google form, escape room stuff that I did with my students. Our class agendas. If you want to see any of this, just send me an email and I can sort of show you what I did with this. But these were sort of resources that I used this week, and some of them are going to roll over into the next week too. Like 2 of them are. But then I'm going into next week now. I'm going to create a new material space. Just so that I can sort of look at stuff in a snapshot, especially like this form that I keep coming back to for them to ask me questions. I want it somewhere handy that's easy for me to look at. And then if you want to sort of hide those so that they go away and it's not too much to look at, we have a little button. Oh, let me shrink myself in the corner. We have a little button right here that says Hidden Workspaces. And these are old form spaces. So like I was keeping things like this, right, in these other things. And I can pull those back at any time. So if you have a certain unit, maybe you want to pre-plan, you can put all the things you need for that unit in there, and then you can hide it to the bottom and pull it up when you actually need those resources, which has been really helping me just not feel brain overloaded. To create a workspace, you just click this create, you title it what you want it to be. So this is what I need to do. I'll need to make anyways. And then it can let you add files you've already created. And it found one that has the same word I'm looking for, which I'll just go ahead and add that selected file in there because that's where it's going to go anyways. And I can put done for now. That is not the only way to add files though. So let me show you from my drive. This is sort of our everyday version. If you have the little, I like this version. You can also, if you're a list person, you can switch it to this mode and see them all sort of vertically like this. My music brain is upset, so let me switch back. There we go. So for example, I need this band sectionals breakout rooms. I'm going to want to add it to a workspace for next week. If I give it a right click, click add to workspace, you can just choose where to push it over to. So it's going to be for my next week materials. And now when I click priority, that is a handy document right here that I can share the link out to my students with and have it for Google Classroom just sort of right there ready. So I found that that is like extremely helpful, and I hope that that helps you. If you haven't been using that, that's great. It's just a great tool actually. And rather than looking at things like this, so if I click into my recent, this is just, I can't even handle it, and it's everything the kids have shared with me. It's everything. It's just too much. I can't handle it. Same thing if I go into shared with me. Now the cool feature in shared with me that I actually really like is, let's say like I want to know what my buddy Christian sent me. I can actually look up his name in this search bar. If I could spell. Oh my gosh. It's been a long week. Wow, this is not a good example of me spelling, but F. Okay, so now I can actually see everything Christian shared with me. I had him as a 7th grader last year. So these are things, we didn't really use Google Classroom very much last year, but these are everything he sent. So if a particular student is like, did I turn something into you? Have I shared this? Between you and that student, you can actually look them up in our shared with me section. And if they've turned it in on Google Classroom, it will be there for you to find. So I think that that's helpful if you're looking for an individual kid. Similarly, if you want to look for like maybe a bulk class assignment, we all have a forced folder on us called Classroom. And it's going to look wild because it has every Google Classroom you've ever made or participated in. But the cool thing is, if you had an assignment that you've done in the past that was really cool and you don't know where to find it in your drive now, but you know you had it in there last year, you can actually dig it out of these old archived things. So if I wanted to pull out ASB's old spring fling info, I could. But for our current stuff, if I click on one of our classes from today, for example, I can actually see what the kids have turned in regarding the name of and then set assignment. And you can sort of look at it in bulk, which the only flaw of forcing a copy is that it names it copy. But if the kids actually start turning things in to you and it comes straight from them, you'll be able to see their name light up right there, which is a quick, easy way to look at all of assignment block, kind of like having a stack of papers. So if you encourage the students to change it to their first name when they turn those things into you, that does make it a lot easier to sort this. And now I know that going forward into next week. But that's just something, so if you want to look at it like an assignment at a time, you can go into Classroom, pick the class, and pick the assignment that you assign to students. So, and you can only see work that's been turned in rather than fishing through Google Classroom through all of the work they haven't turned in yet. And I think that's sort of my quick tips, actually. That's all I wrote down on my piece of paper for notes. So I hope that helps. And I tried to keep this video short. If you have questions, let me know.